Hey guys, welcome back to Ansel Economics, and today we're bringing the newspaper edition part 3 for our 12th podcast.
But before we start, we have got tweet of the week. So today's tweet was about LIDCs, and we tweeted, the pandemic will economically expose poorer countries, most notably LIDCs, who are already financially and economically weak. Comment down below what you think about it and how much you agree with that statement, because most definitely we will see some international inequality coming up. So let's get down to it.
So, our first article today is from the Financial Times, and it is investors need to decide whether the risk of inflation is real. So, obviously, the pandemic has caused a bit of uncertainty. So, Alan, what do you think about how inflation will change due to the pandemic?
Yeah, so I think this article is in particular targeted towards the vast amount of borrowing that countries are doing and the vast amount of injections that's going into these economies. Investors are kind of needing to be wary about inflation due to that. But in terms of inflation and the risk of inflation, I don't think that that's going to be an issue, particularly during such depressive conditions like this.
Yeah, so I would have to agree with you for there. So I don't think the risk of inflation currently is real, but what about long-term effects? Do you think we will see a rise in inflation in the long run due to coronavirus?
Oh yeah, 100%. And as consumerism goes back, as businesses open up again, we're going to be seeing a lot of recovery, and that recovery is going to facilitate, more money circulating around the economy, and we're going to see inflation, going up. But in terms of dangerous levels of inflation, I don't think that's going to be achieved, just because of how far down we've reached because of the pandemic. Is going to take a lot of injection, which won't happen to reach such dangerous levels.
Yeah, obviously, I think it's quite difficult to reach these dangerous levels in a time, but I think it's always possible for certain countries, especially ones which are really looking to bolster their economic outlook, especially for the future, trying to capitalize on the sort of situation at hand. Do you think that some countries should maybe adopt more policies that sort of incorporate inflation?
Um, in terms of recovering, in terms of this particular situation and what we're in, I don't think inflation is something that you need to consider in terms of recovery. I think we have goals that we need to achieve, which is sustaining the economy, reaching levels of consumption that were equal to that of before or even more, and restoring consumer confidence. And all of that will produce inflation as a byproduct, and I don't think inflation is the ends. I think it's the means towards getting where we want to be. So I think that needs to be taken into account.
Yeah, I think a lot of these countries will definitely have to target consumer confidence. Obviously, it's absolutely plummeted during recent months. And obviously, if we can improve and grow that again, we can stimulate economic growth, which I think is really quite key for these countries to recover.
Yeah,
Um,
precisely.
so, yeah.
In terms of this kind of inflation as well, I think as countries are recovering, now is the time where countries need to be more wary of inflation, because consumption is now going to recover at a much faster rate than it has in the last few months. And so if the government continues to inject more and more money into the economy, this is where they run a risk of inflation, when consumption isn't at rock bottom. So what's your opinion on that? Do you think that they need to be wary going forward?
Yeah, well, I think that comes down to central banks. So places like the Bank of England, for example, their aim is to obviously adjust interest rates and things, but it's all in line with inflation. So
Yeah.
there are measures to tackle this. So their main goal is obviously to make sure that the growth of the economy is sustainable. So that is one benefit. So that it's not all weighted on the government. There are obviously things like the central bank, which also own a part responsibility and can help reduce that risk if it is getting out of hand.
Yeah, precisely.
So,
So, the next article we had was an article from the Financial Times. Explosion of violence now dooms Mexican leaders bid to calm cartels. Now, we chose this article because we wanted to talk about crime. The drug cartels in Mexico are a large part of Mexico's total kind of economy, including the black economy. So we wanted to analyze the effects of that. So Ravi, what is your take on the whole crime and economy?
Well, I think crime to an extent can be useful, but then again, it's awful for social welfare. I think to an extent it's used in countries to manipulate data and figures. We saw when people like what's his the Colombian drug lord, cartel owner Pablo Escobar.
Pablo Escobar, yeah,
Yeah, he used so all the revenue that they were generating from his trafficking was being shown on their GDP growth stats and things like that. So
yeah,
obviously it's all illegal stuff, but it was being actually used to promote the growth of Colombia when in fact it wasn't essentially legal.
yeah,
So yeah, I think there's a danger of a lot of data manipulation going on.
yeah. Do you think these kind of cartels and drugs, kind of, uh, in organizations, they can be tolerable to certain extents in terms of obviously what they're selling isn't good, but they do offer employment to people who otherwise would have been unemployed, even though it's illegal. They are providing opportunities for people to have a better life, compared to what they are, what they were before. I was reading a book, and they compared the kind of organizational structure of cartels to that of franchises like McDonald's. They operate in nearly the same way. So do you think that these cartels, do provide opportunity for people to have a better life?
Yeah, like you said, they definitely do provide employment for people like policemen. But I think the problem is, I think we still need policemen regardless, whether we have cartels on the street or not. We could have smaller forms of violence. Cartels are big, large, legal organizations which are around trying to dominate a country. And
Yeah,
then, mass murders happen, massacres happen, a lot of tension occurs. We could have civil wars break out. So, in terms of the actual effectiveness, I think they can be more damaging than they can be beneficial because if they were to put a country into such a poor scenario where there is, a civil war, the economic
yeah,
impacts of this would be vastly greater than providing employment for policemen who will still be required anyway, regardless.
yeah, 100%. Using that idea of policemen and how criminals provide jobs for policemen, you can kind of extend that view to think about all the different jobs that crime has given rise to. Network security,
Mm.
hackers that work for the government, policemen, personal security, all of these kind of industries that have been created. Do you think there's a kind of economically acceptable level of crime? Obviously, we can't have a lot of crime, and that's socially detrimental. But do you think there's an acceptable level of crime, or do you think no crime at all is the best situation?
So I think in terms of it depends what type of crime. So if we are talking about murders, I don't think that's acceptable. Don't think that's right. If we're talking about small level petty crime, I think you can get away with it if it is going to benefit the economy. But then again, from the more ethical point of view, it should not happen at all. So
Yeah,
you're sort of on the fence on that one because it's a bit difficult to say because we don't really know the actual economic impacts or benefits of just having a small bit of crime compared to large levels of crime like we do have with all this violence. And like you said, we're seeing the rise of more hackers, more people trying to steal money from people online. We've seen
yeah,
many fraudsters during this coronavirus period. So, people are getting more creative. They're moving away from just the standard, maybe rob a till at a shop where they can get
yeah,
caught on CCTV to doing it behind a computer anonymously.
yeah. No, I completely agree. Yeah,
So, should we go? So that brings us on quite nicely to our last one. So hackers stole personal data from up to 8 Twitter accounts. So we chose this article because we wanted to talk about government and how they have quite a lot of information on us as people. So what's your opinion on that?
yeah. So obviously, this kind of article touches on along the lines of personal data and how important it is to people. And I wanted to think about, or we wanted to think about how the government would use this. And so I think that the government's access to personal data is quite controversial, but
Mm,
I think it is necessary. Providing that the government doesn't use this for commercial gains. They don't sell kind of health details to insurance companies. They don't sell different type of data to private companies that can use it to exploit us, that can use it to kind of close the information gap that we have on them for their own benefit. I think as long as that's not being used, the government having data on us isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there on them giving out information to, say, insurance firms and stuff. Definitely, I don't think that's acceptable. I think they should be telling us, being very transparent with what they're using our data for. But I do strongly, strongly think that they should have our data, whether that be not just messages and phone numbers, but also our personal addresses on social media. So I
Yeah,
definitely seen what Wilfried Zaha spoke out about how he was racially abused by a 12-year-old
yeah,
last weekend. You know,
yeah,
that's a 12-year-old, you know, young generation, and they have this mindset that that is acceptable when it isn't acceptable.
yeah,
And so
100%. Yeah,
we need government intervention in this way. I think now, you know, we've had
yeah,
these firms like
yeah,
Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, but they need to be regulated. They need to be clamped down. They need to collect addresses. So when, say, someone does say something anonymously behind a fake account, they can
yeah,
track back where that fake account came from, and they can be punished.
yeah, yeah. In terms of these kind of, I think the question is towards data and the government having data on us, you know, our personal records, what we've been doing, what we've been seeing. Do you think there's an issue in terms of, you know, I forgot the word for it, but you know, the freedom to do whatever you can. You know, we live in quite in a society where, you know, we have all the rights, and the public are the ones that are in power essentially. And do you think just allowing the government to have access to all of our data kind of promotes a kind of not dictatorship, but a system where the power of the people is being shifted towards those in the high positions only?
Yeah, so I think I agree with you that I think you do lose a sense of freedom because you would then be conscious about what you're sending because you have possibly people collecting your data, your personal data, you know, your phone messages and stuff. But I think it also provides protection for people. So especially people like elderly people, it will provide protection. They're more vulnerable, more innocent. So it will actually prevent hackers from potentially getting into some of these accounts and stealing not just Twitter accounts, but like money as well.
Mm,
So
yeah,
it can be beneficial. You know, if people put their bank account details on a private message, I
yeah,
don't know. That's where the question arises. You know, how do you then get around things like that?
yeah, obviously. And like now we've got an extra unit of kind of insecurity where hackers, if they hack the centralized database, then they have access to millions and millions of pieces of data that can be exploited.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting debate. I think the need for more cyber security is definitely on the rise as everything shifts towards technology online. We've seen, you know, as we talked about before,
Yeah,
the growth of online work and stuff. So working from home,
yeah,
I
exactly. Yeah.
think it's become really important.
Yeah, I think as everything becomes more digitalized, and reliance on technology increases, this kind of industry of not only tech but the security that comes with tech is going to rise in demand, and we're going to see a lot more of these network architects, network security architects, all of these people that safeguard us online. And yeah, I think that's the way forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a good market for there. You know, if people want to get into a market and into where they want a job, I think that will be a very good one where they can earn good money in the future.
Yeah, 100% agree. So I think on that note, we'll wrap up podcast 12.
Mhm.
Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Please do leave a like and comment down below, and feel free to check out our Twitter where you can see more of us throughout the week. So yeah, goodbye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.